Hello everyone, welcome to Starscream's Ghost, a Transformers podcast, your episode-by-episode podcast guide through the classic Transformers Generation 1 cartoon and now Japanese anime continuity. I am Jeremy Graves, and joining me as per usual is the co-captain of the ship, and he's my friend. It is Mr. Andy Hanley. Good sir, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I'm not friends with Sixshot though. That's my only disappointment. You're a very good friend, Jeremy, to be clear, but you are not. You do not have 6 transformation modes. You are not a ninja. Whatever it is,
consultant.
Either, so. Ninja consultant, exactly. So there's still some way to go.
I mean, I do yoga fairly regularly. I can get to some weird and unique positions at times, but I can't transform in 6 ways.
Do you think that's actually? Do you think that's like the unaired episode side story of like how Sixshot has so many transformations? He just does a lot of yoga. I mean, they've got the Autobots have a gym. Sixshot does yoga.
Yeah,
it all
we've established this.
So,
yeah. Oh, it's amazing what can happen when you've not recorded a podcast in a month. Peek behind the curtain, everybody. So yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. In the context of us recording, it has genuinely been about a month since we last recorded the previous episode. So I think it's fair to say, Andy, it's been fun just delving straight back into a couple of episodes, because to get straight onto things, today we will be talking about episodes 32 and 33 of Transformers Headmasters. And I think these episodes, which have the titles of My Friend Sixshot and Duel on the Asteroid, I think it's fair to say, just to get sort of right into things, Andy, that almost just coming back into these 2 episodes specifically after that amount of break for us, I felt it was quite just a nice way to ease us back into it.
Yeah, it's almost like we sort of planned it this way, because we kind of sort of did. But yeah, I mean, these episodes are kind of interesting because they are sort of fillery before we get to the actual climax of the series. Like you could ditch or skip these 2 episodes and you wouldn't really miss anything too fundamental, because they both sort of they kind of sit together a little bit. There's some continuity there, as this series is wont to do. But by the same token, like, these episodes are quite a good lead into the 2-part finale that will be our next episode, because it really sort of sets the scene in terms of we're headed towards Earth for the big climax, so it kind of makes sense to make that a bit of a journey and have some shenanigans along the way. But it also really sets the tone of the sort of the allegiances and the factions and the cliques within the Decepticons and the Autobots. Like, again, the Sixshot is featured quite prominently in these episodes for a reason, which is not particularly surprising, but it sort of hammers home some kind of differences and some schisms there, and we get to see sort of a little bit more of the conflict within the Autobots in places as well. So it actually has some sort of interesting little narrative beats that I suspect will maybe carry through to the finale a little bit as well, because there's definitely a little bit of tension alongside the more kind of normal fare that these episodes give us. And to be fair, there's some pretty good stuff in these episodes. We get an insert song. That's all you really need to know as a hallmark of whether there is like a good action scene in these episodes.
Yeah, and also as well, you mentioned sort of tension. That's on both the Autobot and Decepticon side as well. You may think at this point it's just the Decepticon side, but no, there is tension in the Autobot side, which we'll get to when we talk about the Duel on the Asteroid episode, but there is an element of that episode that I actually wish wasn't resolved, and it ended up just resolving in whatever the 2-part finale ends up being. Which, like I said, we'll get to when we get there, but I think it's kind of the one other thing of just, add just a little bit more tension to this story, and I think they could have perhaps done that. But, as we always say, Andy, we need to remember it is ultimately a kid's cartoon.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I'm kind of still hoping that there's maybe a little bit of that will sort of come back around, but we'll see.
But a quick bit of housekeeping before we go any further, everybody. If you are a first-time listener to the podcast, I mean, first of all, you joined us at pretty much the end of this series that we're recapping, so fair play to you. But if you do want to check out the archives, you can do so by going to our landing page of starscreamspod.com. There you can find all the links to the various podcast providers that you can find our podcast on. Or, of course, if you're watching the video version on YouTube, you can find the link there as well. Of which, hello YouTube, how you doing? And all of the episodes of Headmasters that we have been watching and recapping, we are watching it based on the UK 2005 DVD release of Headmasters, which, if you're watching the video version, is right there, next to me, as it were. But, as we've also said before, quite frankly, if you just search on YouTube, the episodes are available there unofficially. It should be added. If you want to find us on social media, of course, as well, we are on both Twitter, or X, whatever the heck it's called this week, and on Instagram under the username @StarscreamsPod. So Andy, before we dive into the first episode of the day, any additional thoughts or any kind of other housekeeping bits that we should say before we progress?
No, not really. I will say one thing that I don't know why this suddenly came to me in the long gap between us recording these episodes. Maybe I was just pining for this series, but I forgot how bad like the Wheelie toy was for Generation 1. It's really rubbish. I don't know what made me decide to look it up. I guess I just missed Wheelie, but I was like, I don't know, what did that look like? I can't quite remember. And then I looked, I was like, oh, that's rubbish. That was really like cheap and poorly designed.
I mean, I'll give you the opportunity to retract your statement of that you missed Wheelie in case that was a Freudian slip.
I mean, no, that was, yeah. No, I don't think that was really why I looked at that toy all of a sudden. But yeah, I don't know what possessed me, quite honestly.
There you go. With that being said then, folks, and also quick random note as well, that if my voice seems a little bit hoarse or you hear me coughing occasionally, I've basically just had a bit of a wrecked throat for the past week or so I'm sort of pretty much over it. It's not COVID, I've tested every single day for point of reference, but if at any point I should say my voice just seems a bit hoarse or goes a bit random, that is why, so nothing to fear. With that being said, let's move on to episode 32, My Friend Sixshot. First thing to know, Andy, the subtitles in this episode were delayed.
Yes, yeah, which, I mean, again, we could just record that as a thing for pretty much every episode of this podcast at this point, it feels like, and it would always be accurate. But yeah, this was one that felt particularly egregious to me. It was kind of, maybe it's because we'd been away for a while and I just stopped kind of correcting them in my head. But yeah, this was kind of a little bit annoying to watch at times for that reason.
Yeah, part of me really wants to have a conversation with someone at some point going, what happened with the QC on these DVDs?
I think the second part of that conversation would be what QC, and then the conversation would be over, but anyway.
Exactly. So we begin with a panning shot across outer space with some dramatic music playing in the background. The narrator saying, quote unquote, Scorponok and the Decepticon army have departed Planet Master and now head for Earth to implement their grand strategy. However, asteroids block Scorponok's path. This leads to a conversation on the bridge inside of the Scorponok transector, if you will, between Scorponok in his Zarak form and Sixshot, which unfolds as follows. Sixshot saying, it's better to go around the asteroids. Scorponok responding with, what? And take a detour? Yes, sir, responds Sixshot. We can't do that. Continue on course. We cut away because we then go to Battleship Maximus, also flying through space. The narrator saying, meanwhile, Fortress Maximus arrives at the asteroid belt, while pursuing Scorponok. Unlike Scorponok, however, Andy, Fortress decides to go around the same asteroid belt that the Decepticons are going through. He also actually adds a tidbit of, it'll probably be faster to do so as well. So already, Andy, a one-up by the Autobots there, in such an easy base decision in the context of the series.
Yeah, it's almost a perfect like encapsulation of if you wanted like an example of like the difference between the Autobots and the Decepticons in like a non-combat, situation. It's like, this is it. Like Scorponok and Zarak is the guy that, like, when the sat-nav tells him there's a traffic jam, he's like, nah, I'll be fine. Doesn't know what it's talking about. Whereas Fortress is very much like, no, we should probably take the detour route that it's giving us, because it says it'll be 10 minutes quicker.
Back with the Decepticons, predictably, we come to find out Scorponok has made a bad choice, because his transector, currently in Scorpion mode, is being bombarded by asteroids. And we then, get a little bit of our first glimpse of tension for the episode between Sixshot and Scorponok. Excuse me. Sixshot saying, I said we should have gone around it. Scorponok responding with, shut up, I've had enough of you. Back on the smooth sailing Maximus, we see that Daniel and Wheelie are wanting to sneak inside the ship's laser turret to see what it's like.
What could possibly go wrong?
Which, for point of reference, is basically just a room where the turret is housed. It's very bland and has a giant turret in there. There's nothing else major to it except for a door. But as they're getting closer to it, Daniel is having second thoughts about it. Wheelie saying, "You were the one who wanted to go in there to feel like a warrior." Or an warrior, as the actual subtitle said, Andy, but I thought I'd admit that. Wheelie then also adds, "Don't worry, I'll protect you." And as soon as he says that, Andy, I immediately thought, oh my god, how is this going to go wrong? What possible permutation of wrong could it be this week?
Yeah, the rest of the episode pretty much writes itself at that point. Of like, oh, okay, this is all unfolding before my eyes.
We see Daniel walk inside and Wheelie's just milling about outside and seemingly just waiting for Daniel to come out of the turret room. I'm just going to refer to it now as, I suppose. We then go to the bridge, and Highbrow picks up a weird reading on his sensors in relation to said turret room. But at that very moment, Scorponok comes into their view on the main viewfinder, and that moment about that weird reading is quickly forgotten about, and a battle ensues, and battle stations are instigated as well. The red alert bulb, if you will. The narrator tells us, Fortress Maximus goes on full battle alert. And then we see, like I mentioned, the red alert sirens going off, elements of the ship being powered up for battle, and, crucially, a bunch of shutter doors now closing. Including the shutter door to the room with the giant turret that Daniel is inside of and Wheelie's outside. I've got to say, Andy, as a quick sidebar, the moment when Wheelie realises what's just happened and the concerned look on his face, this and the actual some of the battle animation that follows moments after, animation is top notch at this point. Like, the look on Wheelie's face is genuinely, I'll say almost Transformers the movie level-esque of animation quality.
Yeah, this is another one of those episodes in general that is kind of surprisingly well animated, because you kind of you look at the title, you look at where it sits and what it's doing, and you're like, this will just be a throwaway episode. But you know, as mentioned up top, like, we get an insert song in this one, which tells you that, you know, it puts its back into some of the action scene stuff. And yeah, it has a bit of a different look to it in general. Like, I feel like Daniel for a lot of this episode looks more anime than usual. Like, he legit has a bit more kind of like big anime eyes going on. So yeah, whether there's like another studio this was contracted out to, or they were just in a good mood because the series was almost over, I don't know. But yeah, there's definitely a pretty nice step up in animation quality in places for this one.
And based on previous discussions that we had in a recent podcast when we talked about the writer of the episode having written a lot of Gundam as well, those moments of Daniel having like an up-close face, as it were, it did feel very Gundam-esque as well.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Back to the story. To make matters worse, a hit from Scorponok strikes the turret and causes it to malfunction, prompting the unwitting Headmasters to jettison it from the craft, with Daniel still inside.
And unwittingly, air quotes. I mean, let's not forget, like, Highbrow picked up a reading. Like, I'm pretty sure it was idiot meter went off of like, well, somebody's stupid in there, and it's like, yeah, just push the button.
And then from all of the commotion going on, sort of rough and tumble, if you will, this sends Daniel into the side of the room he is in and basically knocks him out. So as well as having trauma in the series, just general freak out moments, like being left on his own at another moment or two, you can now also add concussion to this as well, for the list of things that have happened to Daniel in this show.
Yeah. I mean, it's not been the best of times for him, and this continues to be the case.
At the same moment, elsewhere, Scorponok has ordered Sixshot to disembark the Scorponok transector and attack Magnus personally. Additionally, at this very moment, because yes, we have multiple things going on at the same time, we see what is termed as an asteroid storm, as the TF Wiki noted it, emerge, which, according like it is, Andy, it's a couple of space tornadoes.
Yeah, but that's not pretty cool. Like, space tornadoes is cool.
And this is where we see both Sixshot and the laser turret, with Daniel inside, then get caught up in them and just get sent hurtling into space. Scorponok isn't exactly concerned with the loss of Sixshot. The following quote kind of emphasising exactly how he feels. Leave him behind. He had to be disposed of anyway.
Yeah, that was like the interesting thing that I may be reading too much into this episode as to whether it was like a deliberate decision to send him out, knowing that like, yeah, he might just get bumped off here. Like this might be a good kind of plausible alibi to get rid of him. Like I'm not sure whether that was the intimation of the writing, but even before this happened, I was just like, I don't know, this feels like maybe you're just trying to like abandon or get rid of Sixshot in some way.
Yeah, because we haven't had... I mean, there's always been the odd moment of, oh, okay, that's a plan, but okay, sure, I'll go with it. But we've never seen, from as far as I can recall, Sixshot outright being annoyed at what Scorponok has been conjuring up. So this does feel very left field.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he's always sort of had his kind of... His always been more in with Galvatron than it was with Zarak, you could argue. But yeah, like, I mean, he's also... He's a ninja consultant. He kind of plays both sides by default. So yeah, it is quite the big turnaround. And let's face it, like Sixshot has done a lot of useful stuff in this show. Like I'm not sure even, beyond that you necessarily just want to get rid of him because he is incredibly useful for the most part.
Yeah, he's arguably accomplished the most of any Decepticon in the show this season.
Yeah, for sure.
Also worth noting, Scorponok has now just kind of left the area and is just making their way to Earth. Back on Maximus, we then see Wheelie run onto the bridge and informs Fortress that Daniel is stuck inside the laser turret block. And I think it's fair to say, Andy, that panic stations ensue. Of which Wheelie then has a moment of clarity. Again, in his life. He's had many the past few episodes. And he simply says, "It was my fault. Save him!" And in an effort to keep... to help their comrades save Daniel, the Autobot Target Masters actually step up at this point. We've kind of seen that sort of tension between the Headmasters and the Target Masters since they've been introduced, and there's been a little bit of sort of, calming of that and getting on the same page here and there. Sans Chromedome making some really weird decisions, which... keep that thought in mind, folks, that's all I'm going to say. And the Target Masters basically say, look, you go get Daniel, we'll keep an eye on Scorponok so we can keep you updated. You do your thing. So, okay, cool. Good job, Target Masters. Everyone approves, and they go to try and rescue Daniel.
Yeah, it's a good solid bit of kind of like delegation and personnel management of like, yeah, like the combat veteran guys continue to do the combat thing, and then yeah, everyone else can go rescue the stupid kid. So yeah, it's a very good and clear call, which I did approve of.
The narrator then says, "The train bots have also been told of Daniel's fate." At which point, Andy, we get their quick cameo for the episode as we see them exit Maximus. That was their cameo.
Yeah, we're just gonna do the train thing. Yay! Like remember, which is it's one of those weird because the train bots felt like kind of quite a big deal earlier in this series, but these days, they are literally just the kind of they're literally just ferrying people around when it's required.
Yeah, I mean, when they were on Earth, they were far more prevalent, but now that they're in space, they're just kind of, I guess, in the cargo hold.
Yeah, it does seem that way.
The narrator continues. Meanwhile, the block that Daniel was in has been swept away to a strange planet. It is called Dyra, spelt D-A-R-I-A for point of reference. And the planet is actually a living being. The atmosphere is very similar to Earth's, but Sixshot has also found himself stranded on planet Dyra. Now, from space, Andy, it's worth noting that the planet kind of looks like it would be one of Earth's moons, I guess is one way to describe it. But the surface, it's got a bit kind of a mountain-based region, maybe like a desert, but just with no sand. And they kind of have the odd ravine here and there, if you want that on your old-school bingo card for our podcast here. But otherwise, I like the concept of the planet being a living planet, because obviously the most obvious thing we've had closest to that is Unicron, which isn't even in this continuity, ironically. Well, technically is, but isn't. But that neither here nor there.
Yeah, it's and it's it's one of those things where I could complain about being like, oh, not another kind of barren wasteland of a planet, but at least it makes sense in this one, because it's like, well, it can't be a nice planet, because then that would sort of defeat the whole point of the plot of this one. So yeah, like I'm kind of here for the mountainous ravines and not a lot else for this on this occasion.
Recovering first, Sixshot explores the area and comes across the laser turret. He pops open a hatch to find the unconscious Daniel inside. Daniel conveniently awakens at this point and is horrified to see the Decepticon ninja consultant looming over him. But Sixshot tells him, quote unquote, don't worry. Sorry, much lower voice. Don't worry. I don't carry guns to shoot children. To which Daniel just says, I don't trust Decepticons! And Sixshot just responds with, well, suit yourself then.
At last we finally found like a line that the Decepticons won't cross, apparently. Although I'm pretty sure they have tried or at least threatened to shoot Daniel before. So I'm not quite sure that I buy into this. I mean, he's definitely been in some combat situations where there's been active gunfire around him. So, I don't know. I feel like, I mean, again, continuity, this sort of doesn't happen. But like in Transformers the movie, they tried to shoot at Daniel when he's on Junkions. So yeah, I don't know.
Fair point.
I feel like the Decepticons would absolutely shoot children. So if Sixshot is watching, please don't set your lawyers on me. But I don't believe you.
Yeah, it is. I think this is very much a Sixshot directive, because we've seen. In fact, I think it was the Decepticon Target Masters within the past couple of podcasts that we published, where we literally saw them just murdering people left, right, and centre in a city, just going through buildings, just shooting anyone at random. So they've definitely got the murderous intent, but Sixshot's always been a bit more reserved, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, yeah, like I mean, children is maybe a different class, but yeah, I mean, generally speaking, in this series in particular, the Decepticons have been even more murderous than usual. They have gone around and obliterated a bunch of people on a couple of planets. I mean, there was also that episode with Alan or whatever his name was that was Chromedome's friend, and they made short work of a lot of them as well.
Yeah, when he needs to be nasty, he really can be.
Yeah.
Daniel is naturally untrusting of Sixshot, but Sixshot himself just isn't bothered by this fact. It's kind of more okay, I'm stuck with a human. It's a child. I'll just keep an eye on him, I guess. That's kind of the mentality you feel. But within seconds, we get our first glimpse of one of arguably just the enemies of this planet Dyra. Because a rocky humanoid creature suddenly appears behind Daniel, attempts to grab him from behind, as it were, but Sixshot immediately just open fires on it and just blows it, as the TF Wiki so eloquently put it, to pebbles. And then Sixshot immediately realizes that the presence of rock people means that, quote, this must be the fabled planet Dyra.
Now, I've got to admit, at this moment, having had like our various like battle beasts moment during the series, I'm like, is this going to be the Rock Lords? Like, because they were in the GoBots movie. Like, surely this isn't what's happening, but maybe like weirder things have happened in the show. Spoilers: it is not the Rock Lords. Also, that GoBots movie is goddamn terrible. But anyway, that's another podcast entirely.
Yeah, I like the design of these rock enemies, and it's not the first time we're going to see them either. For anyone who sort of reads X-Men comics and such, the design kind of reminds me of one of the newer mutants by the name of Rockslide, which I appreciate, Andy, you're not necessarily up on your X-Men lore and such, but it's a sort of similar design, but just the concept of the enemies being rocks, which we come to learn later are kind of like zombies as well and can just sort of revive and re-rock themselves, I guess, however you want to phrase it. I really like the concept and the design of the enemy. Yeah,
they kind of have a sort of general sort of like golem feel to them from like various sort of fantasy tropes. But yeah, they kind of like it's very easy to make kind of rock beings look sort of just boring or just not in a way that they just don't work as a kind of like, oh no, that's an enemy. Whereas there's something about them here where I think it is this like kind of zombification of them and the kind of the shambling nature of them that it just kind of makes them work as like, okay, this feels like a threat. And again, even kind of like Sixshot's commentary here sort of upgrades it from just like, oh, I don't know, some random things I have to shoot, to like, oh, this is sort of a well-known planet and phenomena, so I guess it's kind of important.
And I should say, in reaction to the idea of like the fabled planet Dyra, Daniel's reaction was kind of a bit bemused, but in a relaxed way, he just responded with, huh. Okay, good job, Daniel, good job.
Yeah, Daniel's bored and wants to get back to his light gun video game already.
But speaking of Daniel, he's kind of just unsure what to make of this entire situation. But his unease is set aside briefly when he spots a rainbow in the sky. It's like, oh, it's just like Earth, we get rainbows here. But Sixshot, however, is now he's on his equivalent of a red alert bulb at this point. And he just goes, effectively, oh no. Tries to shoot the energy shield. We come to find out it is. Nothing happens. He tries to fly through it. Can't get through it. Just bounces off. Because, as I just managed to spoil inadvertently as I was saying it, it turns out that this is an energy shield, which we come to find out was made by the rock people to basically trap their prey so that they can't escape. So, I like that as a concept. The narrator, particularly Andy, actually saying, the rainbow is a transparent barrier to deflect artillery fire.
Yeah, I mean, I personally just like the idea that Sixshot just really hates rainbows in general. It's just out in town, and it's was a sunny day, it rained a bit, there's a rainbow, and he's just like, right, we've got to shoot it. But yeah, as it turns out, he was right to on this occasion.
The narrator continues. Well, as we go elsewhere, I should say, he continues. Meanwhile, Fortress Maximus continues searching for Daniel. So we're back out in space, and the Autobots have successfully deduced the trajectory of the winds of the asteroid tornado thingies that we talked about earlier. And it turns out that they all combine then into one giant long tornado, and they set a course for the planet they have determined where it ends. The Trainbots are also recalled for their second very brief cameo of the episode. Thus, Andy concludes the Trainbots' appearance for this episode of the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who knows? Maybe for this, I feel like we'll get to the TF Wiki and be like, yeah, this is the last time you ever see the Trainbots. That's gonna be it. That was their big swan song.
Imagine if that was their swan song. What the heck? So a little time has passed on Dyra, meanwhile, and Sixshot and Daniel are simply just sitting and waiting on a cliff edge. And this prompts Sixshot to inquire if Daniel has any food on him. And he pulls out of his pocket a solitary, what turns out to be homemade space ration. And he then has a moment to himself, as it were, as this reminds him of his parents. We see a brief flashback sequence of him, Spike, and Carly in the kitchen, and Carly telling Daniel as she has pulled out a tray of these rations from the oven or something similar, where she says, I made these space rations myself. They're full of goodness, and I made them especially for you. After the flashback, Daniel then just says to himself, Mum. To which Sixshot then responds with, feeling abandoned. And Daniel just goes, no!
Yeah, to ruining the moment, Sixshot. I will just say, I for some reason, I just find it incredibly funny that the one thing that, like, Carly will bake is, like, space rations. It's like, you could make a lovely cake, you could make a nice casserole or something, but it's like, no, son, have these rations. It's like,
you must always have one on you at all times, because you never know.
Yeah, like, I feel like this is, like, the only thing she could find that she can make that isn't explosives, and it's like, well, I guess that's all I have to do.
So Sixshot at this point insists that he should eat this now because, quote unquote, you need to grow strong to fight the rock people. And your immediate thought as the viewer is, how? How is he going to fight the rock people, Sixshot? Enlighten me on this, please.
Yeah. Also, how is he going to grow strong? Like, that's going to take more than one lot of space rations. Like, unless there's some kind of spinach and Popeye effect going on here, this is not really going to move the needle all that much.
spinach and Popeye, or, a senzu bean in Dragon Ball,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you did say Daniel was looking very anime this episode.
Fair point.
Maybe he was. Maybe Carly's space rations is enough to make anyone go Super Saiyan. Who knows?
But this is also a moment where Daniel kind of starts saying to himself that Sixshot, you know what? He doesn't seem that bad of a guy. Which prompts him to say a line which, for whatever reason, just made me chuckle heartily. But he just then says to Sixshot, "Are you all right, Mr. Sixshot?" just such a random line, but I just chuckled. It was a great line.
Yeah, I mean, not an unfair question. It's like there's something a bit off about this whole scenario. So it's well asked.
Sixshot just basically responds by going, "Stop it, human," and just tells him, "Don't overestimate him." And then Daniel has an inner monologue where he ponders, he's really a gentle person. Why did he join the Decepticons? Oh, spoiler, folks, we don't know yet, if at all. It's at this point that the rock people arrive en masse. Because, of course, while they've been talking, Andy, they got surrounded. Good job, people. Good job. But we get a bit of action here. Sixshot is doing most of the work, but Daniel actually plays... He does some work here, Andy, because it turns out that blaster that we saw earlier in the show, which was for the video game, that I think it was highbrow modified to be an actual laser gun, he's somehow got that with him. Good job, I guess. And he literally just shoots one clean off in the face.
Yeah, no, some good work, and yeah, I mean, to be fair, like if I had like a light gun that someone had modified to be a real gun, I'd probably carry it around quite a lot as well.
Their next task is to find a way around this barrier. Back in outer space, the narrator says, "Meanwhile, Fortress Maximus breaks into the asteroid stream. Entering is one of the most dangerous things in space." It's certainly a bumpy endeavour, Andy, we come to see. And so much so that we see Wheelie starting to panic as he's clutching a photo in his hand of Daniel, Spike and Carly, which my immediate thought is, that must be a blooming big printout to fit in your hand.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like the digital version is in one of those massive floppy disks that Fortress is carrying around.
And then this prompts Daniel to start thinking about, what if they can't save Daniel? He then asks Fortress, "Commander, what shall I tell his parents if we don't save Daniel?" My immediate thought is, Fortress just says, "Tell him it's your fault."
Yeah, which, I mean, to be fair, for once, this at least wasn't really Wheelie's fault entirely. But yeah,
I mean, he gave them access to the laser turret room.
He did, but sort of somewhat under duress. So I'm willing to cut him some slack on this one. But I did think that was a highly entertaining question to ask at that moment in time. Just like, oh well, that's a bit of a pivot.
And Fortress's actual response was, "Calm down, Wheelie. Pray that Daniel is safe." So not even really a massively, big like pep talk or anything. It's just like, just hope he's okay.
Yeah.
Back on Dyra, Daniel and Sixshot track the rock people to their base of operations, as it were. Which, of course, Andy, is a crater with a flaming pit in it. A furnace-like mouth of sorts. Not kind of like... Here's a parallel. Imagine in the original cut of Return of the Jedi what the Sarlacc pit looks like. Before they added in like the big kind of Little Shop of Horrors giant mouth monster that comes out of it. It's just a pit. Just imagine that, but it's just full of flames like it's a volcano. And it turns out that the reason there is that is because the rock people are feeding the planet whatever they find, be it debris, food, quote unquote, just like meteorites, whatever they deem is worthy enough to be classified as food for the planet, they throw into that hole to feed the planet. As a concept, Andy, I like it.
Yeah, it's kind of, again, so there's a certain amount of Unicron vibes to be had from that. So, yeah, it's interesting stuff.
And I do like the way that Sixshot puts it, actually. I wrote down this quote. He told Daniel, "It survives by devouring wrecked spaceships or fallen meteorites. If we're caught, we'll be thrown to the flames like prey." It's like, Sixshot, you've got to learn how to, like, talk to children.
Yes, yeah. Clearly not very experienced in that field.
To continue the conversation a bit later, Sixshot is very much in favour of completely destroying this living planet. But to do that, they need to actually get around or eliminate the shield that they're being held in. But Daniel is sure to point out that he knows Battleship Maximus will come to save them. And Sixshot has already resigned himself to the fact they've both been abandoned and is telling Daniel he should just realise that as well. But Sixshot, in saying that, in trying to sort of say it but not say it, is being a lot kinder in nature, I should say, than we have seen him before in the show. Because, of course, what he has said has made Daniel cry. So he's realised he's messed up and he's got to try and sort it out. He tries to give Daniel a pep talk of sorts by simply saying, "Pull yourself together. At times like this, you must be calm and wait. I am a Decepticon. You are an Autobot. How strange that two sworn enemies are thrown together like this. Daniel, you seem like an old friend. It's strange." Daniel responds with, "I feel the same way." "You're the first one to think of me as a friend, Daniel. You're a kind-hearted boy. It moves my heart." Hearing that has raised my spirits. Good. Don't worry. I promise to get you to Earth once we're out of here. I really liked this scene, Andy, because it's a completely different side of Sixshot than we've ever seen. And it makes me want to just learn more about Sixshot and his background, which is sort of inferred by Daniel earlier on. Again, folks, mini spoiler, we don't learn anything else in this episode or the next one, funnily enough, either. But it does just add a lot more intrigue into Sixshot as a character, and I'm really fascinated by it.
Yeah, I do kind of wish that they'd had the time to get a bit deeper into it. Because we've sort of, over the course of Transformers, we do get this kind of stuff eventually. It's like, the whole thing between, like, Starscream and Jetfire, where they used to be, colleagues, and then, they kind of split factions due to the war and all of that kind of stuff. Like, there are some interesting sort of quote-unquote human stories that sort of occasionally crop up within this series, and it felt like we were maybe on the cusp of one here, but then, we don't actually really get anything out of it at the end.
But this conversation has also distracted them from their goal, like earlier, because they suddenly notice that they are surrounded once again. The rock creatures attack, but this time, Daniel is seized. The rock monster, runs away with him into the pit towards the flaming hole, tries to throw Daniel in there. But before he can, Sixshot comes leaping out of the sky like he's a character in Street Fighter, does a flying kick, and catches Daniel before he falls in. Scene. In space, we see that Battleship Maximus is still being buffeted by space winds. That's a TF Wiki put it, which I did laugh at quite heartily. Unable to break free of the hurricane they have found themselves trapped in. Until Chromedome, Andy, fires the never-before-used, and I'm assuming we're never going to see it again, Frost Beam, which crystallizes the atmosphere, basically turning it to ice, allowing them to break through, and then they see planet Dyra in the distance. A very interesting thing, Andy, but I'm fully expecting we don't see this Frost Beam again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm already thinking of all the ways you could retroactively have used the Frost Beam to not have Cybertron blown up, etc., etc. It's like maybe you could like defuse a time bomb with the Frost Beam. I don't know, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that's gonna be its one and only appearance, sadly.
And then a little bit of kind of like a continuity flow thing here. They also show within this moment that all of the asteroids are still being thrown towards the planet's surface. So that explains how lots of other meteorites and such are falling onto the planet for it to be fed. So I did like that little random bit of detail there.
Yeah, for sure.
Back down on Dyra, we come to find out at this point that these rock creatures are like zombies. They just revive themselves. And then, Andy, in a random twist of fate in some ways, they just all throw themselves into the flame pit. Yeah, and at that point, I'm thinking, guys, I think you got the wrong memo there. But of course... Go on, sorry.
It was one of the first things I thought about when they were kind of feeding stuff to the planet. It's like, well, surely, like, at some point, this planet entity just demands that the rock people just feed themselves to it. So I was not entirely surprised that this was happening.
But of course, Andy, this is a Japanese anime series. And what does Japanese culture love in general, be it in live action or anime? They love giant kaiju monsters or combinatory things. So of course, the rock people combine into a kaiju giant rock thing of sorts.
See, I was going to say a beach episode, but
actually, a very fair point. Japan also does love that. You're not wrong.
It's like, it's the rock people, but in bikinis.
A rockini?
I don't even want to think about it.
Now, let's move on from that. That's like a transformation sexy conversation from way earlier in the podcast run. So the creature we come to see pretty much immediately is impervious to most attacks from Sixshot. He's transforming into all his various modes, which of course Andy Iden immediately wrote down. This is the obligatory let's show off all of Sixshot's forms so that parents can weep for their bank accounts in fear at what their children have seen moment. And it even actually gets a hold of Daniel at this point, but in all of the melees, Sixshot is able to rescue him and gets him to hide out of the way. The fight continues, and Sixshot, that's not a good way of saying it, Sixshot, there you go, is really not having much luck here. But speaking of luck, Daniel gets some because he shoots the giant rock monster right between the eyes and injures it slightly. So Daniel finds the weak point, allowing Sixshot to transform into his wolf mode and fly right between its eyes, taking its head clean off the shoulders and destroying the rock monster outright. At this point, Battleship Maximus flies overhead and lands in front of the pair. The Headmasters emerge and mistake the really unique situation of Daniel sitting on Sixshot's this is not a good way to say it. Sixshot's shoulders. I could have written this a lot better, but I'm going with it.
No, say it 10 times really fast.
Sixshot's shoulders, Sixshot's shoulders, Sixshot's... No. Daniel's sitting on his shoulders, and the Headmasters see this, and they're of course like, the heck? And my immediate thought is, I really hope he doesn't start sounding like a parrot. That's kind of what it feels like. But there is a moment of tension. But the situation is sort of quelled quickly by Daniel, no less, because he's the one that's saying, "No, he helped me. Don't hurt him. He's also quite a nice guy, really." Chromedome ain't at all convinced, and even with Daniel doing kind of like a puppy dog eyes moment at Chromedome to not hurt him, we then see the Decepticon Ninja Consultant quickly depart. Daniel is upset because he didn't get to say goodbye to him properly, and then just calls out into the air, "Sixshot!" A little later on Battleship Maximus, now continuing their way to Earth and such in pursuit of Scorponok, Daniel laments that Sixshot will now be returning to the Decepticons and says, quote unquote, "If only we weren't at war, we could be friends. Why are we at war? Why can't we get on?" And the Headmasters, we see them silently agreeing with that notion. The narrator then adds, "Daniel's bitter outcry moves the hearts of the Headmasters, but they have to fight to protect Earth from the Decepticons." Suddenly, a transmission comes in onto Maximus. It's Point Blank, who reports that Scorponok has just entered the Earth's solar system. Everything is now clear to the Autobots. Scorponok's target is Earth. Fortress says, "We must defend the Earth at all costs." And as Maximus continues flying through space, the episode concludes with the narrator saying, "The fierce struggle between the Autobots and the Decepticons draws closer moment by moment." And then we get the cheesy ending, and that's the end of the episode. Overall, Andy, I really enjoyed this episode. It's something totally random in the context of the show, but it actually works in the context of the show as well. And I've drawn a blank as to what other shows have done this before, be them anime or maybe just sort of Japanese live-action shows in general, but you definitely see this in plot points in media in general, of sort of two enemies being stuck together and having to coexist for a bit. And I thought the way they were able to do this in a kid's cartoon with the time they had to work with, sounds like we said would like a bit more information about Sixshot's background and whatnot, but I thought overall they did this very well and actually made it fairly compelling viewing as well.
Yeah, it was a pretty decent episode, and yeah, like you say, this is a pretty sort of rote plot point for this kind of series, because there's always one episode, and again, like Transformers has done this pretty well multiple times, where you've had like Autobots and Decepticons having to work together or something of that ilk. But this is something a little bit different compared to that, and it adds an interesting sort of extra dimension to Sixshot, and it is also, as much as there's stuff that we don't really get a follow through on from this episode, these events do kind of still follow on into the next installment as well, in some ways that kind of help to accentuate that, which again I think continues to be the benefit of this series versus kind of some of the US seasons, where clearly it was made for syndication and a lot of it had to be standalone so that they could broadcast episodes in whatever order further down the line. But being able to have that continuity of like, okay, we can kind of revisit aspects of this in the next episode, and this episode sort of plays off of things that have happened prior to that, all really helps it out. And again, like better animation quality I think really helps with some of the action stuff. And like Sixshot in general has been kind of an interesting character throughout this series, so it's kind of nice almost for him to have a bit of time in isolation from the other Decepticons to see a little bit more of what makes him tick, even if, like you say, we don't quite get the full picture out of it.
So now let's head to the TF Wiki and let's see if there are a couple of additional notes that perhaps fill in a few blanks or maybe just add more intrigue, because it wouldn't be the first time that's happened. Continuity notes. Daniel is using his Challenge Blaster video game light gun, originally introduced in the episode Find Scorponok's Weak Spot. He is using it as a weapon again, as he did in previous episodes, Mystery of the Space Pirate Ship, the Master Sword is in danger, and the Zarak Shield turns the tide. Chromedome's vendetta against Sixshot remains, after his hand in the deaths of Abel, in Terror of the Six Shadows, and Ultra Magnus, in Ultra Magnus Dies, and Jack, Miraculous Warriors, Target Masters Part 2. This subplot will come to a head in the next episode, so we'll be talking about that more in depth in a few moments' time. Here's a little bit of an interesting note for you, Andy. This isn't the first time that Daniel and Sixshot have been stranded on a planet together, forced to team up, only for Daniel to learn that Sixshot isn't such a bad guy. According to the TF Wiki, these two previously bonded in issue 4 of the Headmasters manga. Of course, shortly after the encounter, Sixshot killed Ultra Magnus in Ultra Magnus Dies, thus the need for him to prove his inner goodness to Daniel all over again. Regardless, you'd think one of them would have mentioned this earlier team-up at some point in this episode, wouldn't you? So it's an interesting point in that I didn't realise there was a manga that was running, I guess, concurrently with the show. So that's interesting to know. Yeah,
I guess. I mean, that's Japan for you. They do like to do that.
Yeah, and depending how deep they want to go, you can get very lost in the story and how it progresses. This brings us on to foreign localization. Some of the episode titles in other languages were in Mandarin, simply My Friend is Sixshot is how it translates. In Italian, also My Friend Sixshot. In Russian, The Enemies Become Friends.
I mean, kind of there, I guess.
The Shout Factory subtitle name is My Friend Sixshot. Excuse me. And the Omni Productions English dub. The name of the episode is From Enemy to Friend.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's fine.
There is an additional note here. No reference is made to the planet being alive itself. The rock creature throws stuff into the fire pit to make food for themselves. So basically, they say it's like an oven.
I mean, Planet Oven just doesn't sound quite as exciting somehow. The planet of legend.
Planet Oven. So that wraps up that episode, Andy. Literally nothing else to note. Again, I enjoyed the episode. I think it's definitely worth watching if people are interested in actually checking it out. But any additional thoughts or notes from your perspective based on what you saw?
No, I think it's a good bit of connective tissue as we sort of get towards the end of things. Like it's kind of interesting how this series is sort of bringing together a lot of the sort of character elements and sort of bringing them to the point where it ups the stakes for the finale. Like, as we mentioned, the whole Chromedome Sixshot thing is also going to be pivotal here, but like kind of Daniel's emotional state is potentially an interesting angle to that as well. So I don't know if that will play in the final episodes, but it's, you know, it sort of changes the stakes quite a bit from his point of view, from like, oh, the Decepticons are all bad, to like, well, maybe some of them are actually okay.
Fair point indeed. With that said, it's time to move on to episode 33, Duel on the Asteroid. The narrator begins by saying, Scorponok is cruising through the asteroid belt. With the Autobots aboard Battleship Maximus still hot on the trail of Scorponok and the Decepticons on the return trip to Earth, a report comes in from the Target Masters. As we heard at the end of the previous episode, they are now entering the Earth's solar system and are progressing slowly through the asteroid belt within it. Now, the asteroid belt, for a point of reference, the narrator explains, quote, the asteroid belt lies between Mars and Jupiter. It is full of asteroids circling the sun. Scorponok has vanished into the asteroid belt. I don't know why, Andy, but I really like that as just like a bit of a context setter there, because it's just a cool plot detail, quite frankly.
Yeah, also feels like one of those moments of just like, quick, put something educational in the series so that the parents don't complain. But yeah, it's kind of, it adds a nice little extra to it.
Highbrow calculates that they will now be able to catch up to the Decepticons before they reach Earth. Something that becomes even more likely when we see in an earlier scene, on the recommendation of Sound Blaster, that the Decepticons should touch down so they can perform maintenance on their propulsion systems. Otherwise, the Autobots might be able to catch up with them. We see them set down on an asteroid named Pallas, Pallas, for a point of reference. While conducting their repair work, the Decepticon headmasters begin to speculate on whether they will see Sixshot again or not, or as they call him, Andy, in the subtitles, the Ninja. Will he return or not? But that debate is put to rest pretty blooming quickly, because the Ninja suddenly appears streaking through the sky and has a dramatic re-entrance, as it were, to his Decepticon comrades as he touches down in a beam of light like he's just had a transformation sequence in a Magical Girl show or similar. And everyone is like, oh, we should go tell Scorponok you're back. To which Sixshot's response is basically, no, I'll do it. And at that point I'm thinking, oh, we're going to get some action here, more tension. I'm looking forward to it. This leads us to the following dialogue exchange between Sixshot and Scorponok. Sixshot saying, Emperor, I am at your service again. We then see Scorponok, once again in his Zarak form, who he's not facing Sixshot when he enters the room, but we, the viewer, can sort of see over his shoulder behind him, if you will. And you can notably see that Scorponok has got a bit of an annoyed look on his face at the fact that Sixshot has returned. He then turns around and says, welcome home! We're stuck on this asteroid and struggling, but I believe in you. With your powers, you can help us. You're indispensable to the Decepticons. You'll have your work cut out for you with our assault on Earth, but rest for now. Sixshot then just says, I'm in debt to you. He bows and leaves the room. And the scene ends with Scorponok having a little evil laugh to himself, and then his eyes glow evil red. All is not what it seems, Andy. But it's a fun little moment now. I like that sort of that very two-faced thing from Scorponok there.
Yeah, it's one of the things that this series has done pretty well. Like, you know, we had some really good dialogues between like Galvatron and Zarak at various points in this series where, you know, they're having one conversation, but then there's like the subtext conversation underneath that, which is clearly entirely different. And this is another good one of those.
Meanwhile, Battleship Maximus has arrived at the asteroid belt and receives information regarding Scorponok's location from the Target Masters. However, as we're seeing this communication unfold, we then see the Decepticons have found the Target Masters, and we get a cool little moment where we see on their TV screen on board Maximus the Target Masters being attacked and having to seemingly avoid the attack, even though, I guess, Andy, their video camera phone was totally fine. Or something. It's sort of a weird perspective thing, but it was a really cool moment nonetheless. Which leads to the headmasters, with the train bots, mind you, who, in this episode, Andy, get to show off their entire transformation sequence, much to the annoyance of all the parents watching, to go rescue them. But that little moment with the target masters being attacked and whatnot, I don't know why, but I really, really like that.
Yeah, it's pretty well executed, to be fair.
As the inevitable battle ensues, we cut elsewhere to see Scorponok charging Sixshot with taking the Headmasters out of the fight completely. Scorponok saying, "Sixshot, bring down any one of the Headmasters. Any one will do." Sixshot says, "If I do, I think I should go for the leader. If I can get Chromedome to Duel, we can totally obliterate them." I see. That's one way. But can you challenge him to a duel? Says Scorponok. Don't worry. I have an idea. And then he kind of like beats his own chest as he's saying that as well. Sort of a little bit weird, but sure. And then Scorponok just says, "Good. I'll leave it to you." And then his eyes glow red once again. Now, there's a funny typo in my notes here, Andy, because I've tried to put the ensuing battle, but for whatever reason, my notes have auto-corrected it to Sixshot enters the sneezing battle.
I mean, that would be an episode that I would quite like to see.
But either way, Sixshot enters the battle, and after a brief scuffle with him, tells Chromedome that he actually wants to settle this between them one-on-one. We see the battle end and the respective sides begin to withdraw, and we find out in a different scene that this duel between the two is going to take place on an asteroid by the name of Juno, Juno. Emphasizing that this duel is about pride and valor as well as a key detail from Chromedome's point of view. As does Sixshot, I should say. We don't see Sixshot prepared to go elsewhere, having sort of informed Scorponok of what's going on. But the Duocons are also in the room at this point, and Scorponok tells them, no, stay around. Don't go yet. I've got something I want to say to you. And Scorponok says, "Set this on Asteroid Juno." The Duocons just go, "What is it?" And Scorponok just says, "A time bomb." And he raises it for us to see on the camera. To which I'm thinking, okay, Andy, on the bingo card, Scorponok blows up a planet with a time bomb. We've not added that yet, but I think at this point we probably need to.
Yeah. I mean, it's like relatively low key compared to the other planets he's tried to blow up, but I mean, to be fair, it's worked really well for him so far. So like, why not? It's just keep at it.
You're not wrong, actually. I wonder if though that the explosion might just blow up more asteroids.
I mean, you'd imagine there would be quite a lot of collateral damage from doing this, but
But he doesn't care.
Exactly. Scorponok not really too worried about that.
Elsewhere, we come to find out that Battleship Maximus has landed on an asteroid named Ceres, spelt Ceres, where Fortress forbids Chromedome from dueling Sixshot, simply because of having a personal grudge to settle. Fortress specifically saying, "I cannot allow a personal duel. Have you forgotten who you are in the midst of all this aggression? We have to stop Scorponok from blowing up Earth. This is a crucial time." Chromedome responds with, "Yes, but my rival is Sixshot." Such an anime thing to say. "It's a fight against the Decepticons. I don't want to turn down the challenge and be seen as a coward." Again, Andy, such an anime thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, also again, like this is another plot point that we've sort of seen in Transformers before, of the like kind of duel as a sort of as a distraction from other stuff that is going on. And I always kind of enjoy that duality of like, you kind of know that this is not actually the big, the big ticket item of what's happening, but at the same time, like, it's a formal duel. You kind of you can't just dismiss it out of hand, because there is sort of, there is like the honor and the process of this thing, and it's like there's a bit of a dilemma there, and I always kind of enjoy that as a plot point in these things.
Agreed. Now, as this conversation is going on, Wheelie, of course, happens to wander by the room and overhear all of this, because again, Wheelie is a problem, and he ends up going to tell Daniel about this duel that's going to happen. And Wheelie helps things even more at this point by emphasizing that one or both of them could die. Daniel has a moment of crisis because obviously Chromedome is his friend, but also Now his Sixshot's his friend. He remembers the experience they had together. It's all fresh in his mind. Daniel does not want to see the two beings that he calls friends fight each other. Which then leads to both Daniel and the other headmasters attempting to talk Chromedome out of the duel. Chromedome, however, one, reminds Daniel that Sixshot is a Decepticon who wants to blow up Earth. Which, for one of his 2 points, Andy, I'll give him that one. It's kind of an essential detail.
Yes, yeah, it is quite important.
But point 2 is he is insistent on this happening. Going so far as to punching one of his fellow Fedmasters? I'm not doing good worse today. Punching one of his fellow headmasters, I'm not going to undo that now, in the face because he offered to basically be his corner man and he felt belittled by that offer. I think at this point, Andy, Chromedome's really losing this because he's done quite a few wacky things in recent episodes.
Yeah, and again, this is a really good sort of character development thing, and you know, as we sort of keep talking about, like, having that sort of episode on episode progression and that continuity, like, really helps here, because we've sort of typical Transformers, you'd have, like, you know, a bad thing would happen to a character and then that would be the end of it. It would reset at the end of that episode. Whereas, yeah, like, Chromedome's had a pretty rough ride through this series, like, partly through his own fault and his own kind of misadventures, but also, you know, generally speaking, like, as we sort of, as was mentioned in, you know, the stuff at the end of the last episode, you know, he's seen quite a lot of bad stuff happen, like, you know, with his own eyes, a lot of it at the hands of Sixshot. So it kind of makes sense that he's sort of a bit unhinged when it comes to this particular scenario. Like, of course he's going to be angry and maybe lose sight of the big picture, or kind of, you know, lose his rag at the whole thing. And so, yeah, I think it's a really good sort of character beat that I'm kind of here for.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And unhinged is the perfect word to describe it as well. We didn't see Point Blank approach Chromedome on the same issues that are being raised. He says, "You're going ahead with it after all. Hot-headed courage is different from the courage of spirit." Which I've got to say, Andy, I love that as a quote. Mm-hmm. Chromedome responds with, "I'm not trying to be reckless." He then turns to a monitor that he's looking, which shows Sixshot transforming into his various forms. "He killed my friends Abel and Jack, and Ultra Magnus too." And then Andy, we the viewer, get to relive the death of Ultra Magnus just one more time because we haven't seen it enough.
Yeah, I do like he killed my friends and that other guy. It's like, well, a bit harsh on Ultra Magnus, but okay.
And he adds, "I will avenge all 3 of them." Point Blank then says, "You'll be expelled from the Autobots if you insist on going. Do you still want to do it?" Chromedome responds, "Never mind expulsion. Better to bear the dishonor of expulsion than be a coward." Point Blank says, "I see. I was once like that myself. When I was rash, the commander told me off. I understand. If that's your decision, I won't stop you." Quick random note here, Andy, which I don't know if this is going to come up again on the TF Wiki notes later, but I want to bring this up now. Per the TF Wiki's recap of the episode, they claim the commander that was referenced by Point Blank was Optimus Prime.
I mean, I always just assume when somebody says commander in that sense that it's going to be Optimus Prime, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing to directly say that, and I don't know, the Target Master's sort of history is a little bit all over, is a little bit spotty, so yeah, I mean, if the TF Wiki says it, who are we to doubt?
Exactly.
But there's nothing really that directly ties them together from the stuff that we've seen anyway.
Chromedome then departs for the battle. We then see on sort of the gangway, if you will, that despite wanting to stop him, the headmasters are told by Point Blank that this is exactly what Scorponok wants. He wants you guys to follow him. Like, don't do it. We need all the hands we can get. Point Blank and the headmasters just watch him go. And Point Blank uses this exact opportunity to inform the other headmasters that because of Chromedome's actions, he is now expelled from the Autobots. Which everyone is like, wait, what? And then at that moment, a big red alert bulb goes off, and Fortress says, Scorponok has blasted off and he's completed repairs. We need to go chase him. Full speed to Earth. So they now have to leave their now ex-comrade. We then cut elsewhere on board Maximus to see Wheelie trying to find Daniel. And he's having a hard job of trying to find him, quite frankly. He then discovers Daniel trying to leave the ship, convinced that he could stop the duel from happening. And should also note, he is wearing his exosuit to travel to the duel location. The narrator also adds Andy, because we've not seen it in a while. By wearing the exosuit, or the Excel suit, as in Microsoft Excel, as the subtitles say, Daniel is able to transform. Then, Andy, Daniel transforms into a mini flying vehicle, which I still can't fathom how his body isn't broken.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's the same issue I have with his, like, car mode in the movie. That's just like, I'm pretty sure you're breaking at least a couple of bones to make this work. But, you know, something Autobot technology. I'm not an expert. But yeah, this feels even more uncomfortable. Of like, at the very least, like, you know, it's pretty rare that you see anybody flying and think, well, I'd rather take, like, an economy seat on, like, Ryanair than this mode of transport. But this is definitely one of them, of just like, you okay?
Yeah, it's an interesting design, and in the edit of the video version, I'll make sure to put it on screen for you as well, which you're already looking at. So it is certainly an interesting choice, Andy. And I don't envy what Daniel's back is going to feel like later in life.
Yeah, I mean, to be between that and the concussion, I mean, he's probably going to have a pretty bad time of it.
Maybe he's not thinking straight. Maybe that's why. There you go.
Yeah, could be.
At this point, the way I've put this, Andy, is if Fortress had hair on his head, he'd have likely pulled all of it out by now. Because Point Blank volunteers to head out to go find Daniel so that Battleship Maximus can follow the Decepticons. Because when Fortress finds out, you can tell he's just got that reaction of, for crying out loud, can we just follow Scorponok? Why is this so hard?
Yeah, like our rival is literally just going to go and blow up this very important planet. Can we maybe do something about this and not have some internal strife, please?
And interesting, one of the other target masters, when they're trying to justify Point Blank going to find Daniel, one of them says it's as good as his own father going. Which prompted me to think, based on Transformers history, may not be the best idea.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure whether to treat that as an insult or a compliment. So.
We then see Maximus take off and head to Scorponok, while Point Blank heads to the asteroid Juno. The narrator then says, the time for Sixshot and Chromedome's duel on Juno is approaching. We cut to the asteroid. Chromedome is ready and waiting, and Sixshot appears, literally with a rush of wind and a flash of light. The duel begins pretty much immediately, and we get a fun moment actually amongst this quick battle, Andy, where they're kind of almost like asteroid hopping, sort of using them as like stepping stones, and they just kind of collide in midair, with Sixshot getting the better of that exchange. It's not long before Daniel appears, all of a sudden, in the sky overhead in his really weird ship contraption thing, and he pleads for them to stop. Daniel ends up throwing himself in between the two combatants, and Sixshot just tries to start denying any friendship between him and the boy, specifically saying, "You're no friend of mine." Daniel challenges Sixshot to simply shoot him then, but Sixshot is not able to do it. He can't pull the trigger. That is, at least, not before Scorponok's bomb detonates and begins tearing Juno apart. Sixshot at this point calls off the duel in the name of saving Daniel specifically, allowing Chromedome to escape with the young lad, but we then see, Andy, that Scorponok is watching this battle from afar because he clearly got the Geocons to install a hidden camera as well on the asteroid.
I mean, they probably put it on as like a pay-per-view on like Sky Sports or something. You know, I mean, it's like the YouTubers boxing that seems to be like every boxing match now. It's just like, hey, check out these guys. They're gonna have a duel. Like, we're gonna make some money out of this on the side.
And Scorponok ends up just saying to himself when he sees this, because he's now seen full out that, quite frankly, Sixshot is like, go save yourselves, quite frankly. He's betrayed the Decepticons, if you will. He just says to himself, He was insubordinate anyway. Now die. And he triggers more explosions by pushing a big button on a remote control. And we then see Daniel almost falling into a crevice, or you could say a ravine that opens up randomly beneath his feet. But Sixshot ends up saving him, and then throws Daniel like a football towards Chromedome. And then, just as they're about to escape, the flames then just suddenly erupt all around Sixshot. He's engulfed in them. He can't move anywhere. And we just see Sixshot say, "Damned Scorponok, you won't get away with this." Then there's another massive explosion. And then, having escaped the asteroid Juno, the two Autobots and Daniel look back, and there is no trace of Sixshot. Daniel begins tearing up. Because, Andy, he has now had more trauma of seeing fallen friends, getting a concussion, seeing zombie Optimus Prime back in Season 3. All of this stuff, and now he's got to watch someone else seemingly perish. And as he looks into the abyss of space, he just once again shouts, "Sixshot!" And then we return to Battleship Maximus with slightly less dreary music. And the narrator just says, "Chromedome's expulsion was lifted when he returned on board." And my thought at that moment, Andy, was, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah, this is like your parents grounding you, but then they need you to go out and do the shopping, so you just get like ungrounded like 20 minutes later. Which, to be fair, I think it's like a bad call in the first place to kind of expel somebody right before this pivotal battle that is about to happen. It's like, maybe you should say like, look, not really very happy about your behavior, but let's talk about this after we've saved planet Earth, maybe.
Yeah, I guess the thing that... Because I mentioned it earlier, like right at the beginning of the show, there was an element that sort of annoyed me a bit when it comes to the story, and I think this was it. Because there was part of me that was thinking, actually follow through on it, and then maybe have like early in the next episode, because, full disclaimer folks, we've not watched the two-part finale yet, so we don't know exactly how it unfolds. But my thinking on this, Andy, was, okay, he's been expelled, so clearly they're going to now carry on, and Chromedome will get to Earth, the Earth area somehow, if you will, and then, you know, there'll be a moment and it's like, look, you're back in, let's do this, do Autobot head formation of friendship or whatever, and they do whatever they do. But I guess I'm just annoyed that of everything Chromedome has done in the series, the amount of times he's gone off on his own in his own way to do his own thing. Heck, in the last podcast we did, Andy, talking about how he just basically sent a bunch of Planet Master youths to their death with his plan. Because he didn't realise fog works in both ways and whatnot. And it's just that thing of like, again, appreciating it's a kid's cartoon, but this is kind of the one time where I thought you could have had this plot point at least go through to the next episode.
It is kind of surprising because even like, again, that's sort of the norm for this sort of thing, right? Is that, you know, hero gets banished or whatever, but then, you know, goes away, hears that his friends are being attacked or are in a really bad spot, and comes back to save the day at the end, you know, despite the fact that he's been expelled. And then they're like, oh, maybe we were wrong about you. You know, cheering, Daniel makes a joke, everyone laughs. And yeah, I did think that was maybe the direction of travel of this episode going into the final episodes, that it would be kind of Chromedome's been, you know, ejected, but, you know, he's going to come back and save the day somehow. And in a way, I kind of like that it's not going that route, and that it sort of, you know, brought everyone back together, because, you know, that has been done before. But yeah, it almost feels like, why even bother like having the expulsion point in the first place when it lasts like 2 minutes?
And everything doesn't end there, as it were, because the overall mood inside Battleship Maximus is good. Even Point Blank is able to have a chuckle at the expense of Chromedome when he asks him, how are you doing? Are your injuries bad? And then Chromedome effectively just says, just a scratch, it's fine. And they have a bit of a hearty chuckle at that. But then we see Daniel is looking a bit down, as he is literally looking down at the floor as well. And Chromedome then says to him, what's up, warrior? Daniel responds with, I wonder what's happened to Sixshot. Chromedome says back, what? Don't worry about him. He's not that easy to get rid of. And Daniel just goes, of course, as he punches the air in delight. And And then the narrator concludes the episode as we see Maximus flying through space and whatnot. Chromedome and Sixshot's duel was a draw due to Scorponok's interference. But Fortress realizes that behind the despicable attempt on Sixshot's life lie more of Scorponok's devious plans. Step by step, the Earth's crisis and the final bloody battle draw closer. Rise up, Headmasters! Fight, Headmasters! And then the episode ends. And overall, Andy, gotta say, I enjoyed this episode a lot again, despite my musings a few moments ago about that one particular story element. But as an idea for it and the reasoning behind it, it all makes total sense going into this final two-parter.
Yeah. I've got like it sort of. I had some preconceptions about how this episode was going to go, and like I thought like is the duel just not going to happen, and it's just all going to be like a feint, and Sixshot's just going to be like, I'm just still on Scorponok and we're off to Earth like suckers. But yeah, like it actually does some stuff, and yeah, I like the fact that there continue to be sort of, a schism on the Autobot side as well. Like, Chromedome, even though he's sort of back in the fold, like, there's definitely still tension between the Headmasters and Target Masters. Like, you suspect that there's still some bad will and some bad blood between various characters in Chromedome for his behavior. Daniel is sort of a bit of a wild card as well, given his relationship with Sixshot. So, there are a few interesting things in play beyond the bare basics of like, oh, well, we've got to fight for the future of Earth for a couple of episodes.
Agreed. And I think on that note, let's advance to the TF Wiki, because I've had a very quick glance, Andy. There are some notes on here. So I get a feeling there are some things to be discussed here. So let's see what we've got. Continuity notes. This episode brings to a head Chromedome's vendetta against Sixshot, a product of the ninja's involvement in the deaths of Abel, Ultra Magnus, and Jack. As we talked about earlier, Daniel and Sixshot's unusual friendship began in the previous episode. Daniel's exosuit transforms into vehicle mode, as previously seen for the first and only time in Transformers the movie.
Yeah,
I swear that wasn't the design in the movie, was it? Was it not like a bike?
It was very similar. I mean, it was like, it was like a kind of car mode, but it was generally the same. I know, like I said, it looked a bit more uncomfortable in space, but I think generally speaking, it was supposed to be the same.
Right. Admittedly, I remembered that being more like a bike, so that might be my brain.
Yeah, no, it's this weird car mode.
Gotcha.
Yeah, also very uncomfortable.
Real-world references. Pallas, Ceres, and Juno are all real-life celestial bodies in the asteroid belt. Mm-hmm. At the time of production on the Headmasters, Ceres was officially classified as an asteroid, and is referred to as such in the episode. But it's set in 2011, and as of 2006, Ceres was reclassified as a dwarf planet. Animation and technical errors. During the first bridge shot of Fortress Maximus, Brainstorm's chest and wings are blue instead of black. As Scorponok watches a remote feed of the explosions on Juno, the whole screen shakes, including Scorponok and the monitor itself.
He's just doing his own effects. It's just like, no, look at this.
Continuity errors. Here's one, Andy. Remember earlier in the episode we got a diagram of the solar system and where the asteroid belt is? Mars still exists on the diagram. Despite the fact it was destroyed on the episode Explosion on Mars, Scorponok appears. I
mean, probably nobody had time to update the maps to be like, Scorponok blew this up, so I'll let them have that. That's fine.
Trivia. This episode is unique among the Headmasters for having its title superimposed over the actual continuing animation of the episode, rather than receiving its own isolated segment with a clip from the episode reused as a background. I did notice that now they mention it, because the asteroid was actually moving, and then when the title card disappeared, you see Scorponok.
Yeah. I wonder if that's just like a runtime thing to squeeze more in, or whether somebody said, you don't have to just have a static title card. We can just superimpose this over animation.
And then someone went, wait, what?
Yes, you mean I've been making these intro bits for like 32 episodes and nobody told me?
Apparently as well, this episode originally aired in a double bill with part 1 of the 2-part finale.
Oh, yeah, I can see why you do it that way.
Foreign localization. In Mandarin, the episode was known as Duel on the Asteroid. In Italian, it was known as Deadly Duel on the Asteroid.
Well, I mean, that's not seemingly not true, because if Sixshot is okay, then there's nothing deadly about it at all.
In English, the Shout Factory American subtitle, DVD as it were, called it Duel on the Asteroid. They also say the almost 2-minute segment before the title card is excised.
Oh, okay.
Was there something else that we didn't see either?
I mean, maybe, yeah, I guess we may never know.
Okay, well, that's another thing we've not seen, I guess, so there you go.
Maybe they had like a recap of Sixshot and Daniel's friendship or something.
So, Omni Productions dub. Here we go. The title is The Plot for the Final Battle.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's quite literal.
So, here we go. Chromedome claims in the dub that Sixshot killed his family.
I mean, we don't know. Maybe he did. Like, maybe that is something we just haven't seen.
Pallas is referred to as a planet instead of an asteroid.
Okay.
And Juno is identified as Char, or more accurately as Jolo, which is the Omni Productions dub's name for the planet Char.
Wow, yeah, okay. I don't know where that came from.
And that, everyone, is the end of that episode. So Andy, before we begin to wrap things up, as it were, any additional notes or things you noticed, or things we should probably bear in mind, or think about, or ponder over, anything at all?
No, I just say there was a moment that I don't think we mentioned in like the My Friend Sixshot episode where I think it was Zarak shouted something about Fortress having a double laser.
Yes. So what I think that moment was, and I ended up leaving that out because it didn't make much sense, but what I think it was when he sent Sixshot out to go and attack Battleship Maximus after like their initial thing, I think he said use the double laser, which I'm guessing was from his jet mode because there are technically 2 lasers.
Yeah, maybe. It just seemed like it's like, oh wow, he's got double lasers. it's like a school playground of like, well, I've got a laser, well, I've got double lasers.
But folks, what that does mean is that next time on the podcast, it's a bit of a landmark in many ways because it is episode 50 of our podcast, which is also somehow conveniently timed to also be the Transformers Headmasters finale story, episodes 34 and 5, titled The Final Showdown on Earth, parts 1 and 2. Andy, it's been a long time coming, quite frankly. I know we've had to like change our podcast schedules a lot and whatnot just because life happens and such, but I'm really looking forward to seeing these 2 episodes. I'm really genuinely excited.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of doesn't feel like that long. It's actually sort of been quite an enjoyable romp through this series. And yeah, like I feel like getting to this finale is a really good example of like what this show has done well throughout, because normally I feel like if this was a normal season of Transformers, we'd be like, yeah, we know what's gonna happen, like, Decepticons will think they get close to victory and then something will happen and they'll get defeated and they'll retreat and it's over. But like this series makes it hard to just make that proclamation unabashed, because this series has quite happily blown up several prominent planets. It's killed off a number of characters. I mean, even this last episode, they're referring to a bloody battle, which kind of suggests like maybe they're going to off some people. I don't know. And it's like kind of all bets are off. Like, you know, I'm pretty sure it's not going to end with the Earth being destroyed, but I wouldn't put it past them. So it's
they've blown up, what, 3 planets technically in this show, is it? Or is it 2 planets and an asteroid now? You know, they've done it.
Yeah, exactly. And they've blown up Cybertron. I mean, you know, it's not just random planet A and random planet B. It's Cybertron and Mars, both pretty prominent planets and as these things go. So, you know, it is kind of like all bets are off. Like, I'm really interested to see what they're going to do with this finale. I assume it will involve the Headmasters, like, you know, doing a thing that will sell some toys, but we shall see.
Yeah, and quite frankly, Andy, is anyone else going to get introduced in this 2-part finale? Because all bets are off at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of like the idea that just, you know, like, the Hot Rod might just come rolling back and be like, yeah, I've finished my quest. Remember me? I went off and did a thing.
Imagine if he actually did and we were just lied to the whole time by the TF Wiki.
Yeah, let's just find out he's just been lounging on a beach on Earth the whole time. It's like, oh, no, I've just got back. Yeah, I've got a tan. Shut up.
So yeah, I've got a new paint job. So what? Yeah. But folks, that is what we're going to be talking about next time. And that podcast will be available roughly 2 weeks after the publishing of this very podcast. If you have enjoyed this, and again, if you're a first-time listener and such, why not tell a friend? We'd really appreciate it. And be you listening on your podcast provider of choice or watching the YouTube video version, make sure you head over to starscreamspod.com. There you can get all of the links, be it to the podcast providers, the YouTube channel, and also our social media pages as well on Twitter and Instagram, where we are the name Starscreams Pod. Andy, before we sign out for today, any other thoughts, feelings, just anything in general relating to Headmasters and ahead of the finale?
What if Daniel's concussion was so bad he imagined the entire episode of being friends with Sixshot? Like, what if that didn't actually happen at all?
I mean, entirely possible, quite frankly. And also, as far as Sixshot's concerned as well, based on the subtitles, Daniel is an Autobot.
Yeah, I mean, like, by association, I mean, yeah, that's absolutely fair. I feel like kind of Spike has been referred to in that way before as well. But it is sort of interesting because certainly, like, a lot of early Transformers, the humans are just referred to as, you know, human germs or whatever by the Decepticons. So it is something of a badge of honor to be called an actual Autobot. But then Sixshot doesn't know Daniel very well. He might have called him something else if he did.
So there we go. And folks, I will just say, I know a few people out there are wondering what's next when we get through Headmasters. We're going to have a chat and have a think about it, because life, as it were. So we'll see how plans are going to unfold, but that is on the agenda to figure out, as it were. So leave that with us. But with that being said, next time we'll be talking about the Headmasters finale. We're both looking forward to it. So until then, from myself, Jeremy Grace, from him, Mr. Andy Hanley, we've been Starscream's Goes to Transformers podcast. Until next time, take care and speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone. So we're going to watch GoBots after this, right?
We'll talk.